Hello and welcome to the second part of my grid tutorial. In the first video, I explained how the technique works and showed you how to do the grid method manually. In this second video, I'll be showing two digital tools that make it easier. The first tool is on the website griddrawingtool.com. It's free and they have a video demo showing how to use the tool. I highly recommend watching this video. It explains the manual method as well, but since we're here, let's go ahead and use the tool real quick. Step 1 is to upload your file. They have a 4 MB file size limit, so you may need to resize your photo, so check on that before you upload. I've done that with mine, so let's go ahead and upload that. After the successful upload of your file, you can rotate, crop, or make adjustments to the photo. You can change the brightness, contrast, and saturation, but in my case, I don't need to do that, so I'll proceed with the grid. From the manual tutorial, we know that our grid needs to be 16 boxes wide. Let's keep this checked to keep the boxes square, and the next step is to change the line color. Our subject is red, so the red default color will not work in this instance. I also avoid using black because in some subjects, the shadow areas can sometimes have black in them, and so the line will disappear in these areas. Normally, I go with cyan because it's a color that doesn't usually appear in the natural subjects that I paint. I also usually change the line width to 1 pixel because a thick line can cover up some important details and you may miss those details. Let's apply the grid, and this is what we have. If you're not happy with this grid, you can make adjustments before you download. That's what I like about this tool because it gives you a preview first. There are other tools out there, but you need to download it and check the file before you can actually see if you're happy with the grid. I'm pretty happy with this, so I'll go ahead and download it. It's pretty fast, as you can see. And this is the picture that we get out of that process. You can then move this to your tablet or to your phone, or you can print it out as your guide when you are drawing on your blank grid. The second digital tool that we will be looking at is a word processor. This is my preferred method because it saves me from having to manually draw any grid. I am absolutely sure with this method that my measurements are correct and my lines are straight. I will be showing you how to do this on Pages because that's what I have, but I think you should be able to adapt the steps or modify it slightly on other applications like Microsoft Word or OpenOffice Writer. Before we proceed, I'd like to give a heads up that this method is not recommended for drawing life size. Other people might recommend it, but I honestly don't. I mean, technically you could, but you'll have to back-figure things out in order for your images to be the correct scale as they end up on your grid. To be honest, the best way to draw life size is to draw from life. But I understand that for many of you, and actually even for myself, it's very difficult sometimes to have the subject in front of you for ethical or logistical reasons. So I may do a separate video on how I do it, but I consider that an advanced problem, so let's deal with that later and focus on getting you started with a simple project first. So let's get started. Like I showed in the manual tutorial, you will need two grids, a blank one and another with your photo in it. Let's review the steps in deciding your painting area. For this project, I will be using the paper Canson Montval, which is 24 by 32 centimeters. Our subject will look better in a portrait-oriented painting, so we should switch that to 32 by 24 centimeters, and then we decide on our margins. I think that a margin of about 1.5 inches or 3.81 centimeters is about good. If we round that off and double that number, that gives us 8 centimeters total margin that we need to take off of these measurements. So taking it off 32 and 24 respectively, that's how we arrive at our painting area, which is 24 by 16 centimeters. This is going to be the dimensions of our table. Let's proceed with creating that table in a new document. Let's set the paper to A4, remove the header and the footer, and even though it says borderless, I prefer to set my margins to a safe number like 0.3 cm. This allows me to maximize the printable area of my printer. The next step is to create that table. Then we format the table so that we have 24 rows and 16 columns. Next, we set the boxes to be 1 cm by 1 cm. This is now a grid or a table that represents our total paintable area. The next step is to add our reference photo. We remove the text wrapping on this image and we do the same to the table. Let's move the image and the table around to get something that we're happy with. You may need to resize the image, like in my case, and then just move the two around until we arrive at something that we like. The next step is to make sure that our grid will be visible over the photo. I find the gray lines a bit confusing over these areas, so I'll change it. I changed it to cyan. The actual image as it looks on the screen may not look very good to you, but from experience I know that this grid will work for me. It's a matter of personal preference, so feel free to change it to whatever color works for you. The next step is to number our cells. This allows us to not get confused when we are drawing. So there you have it. This is now our grid over our reference photo. You can export this as a PDF for easy viewing on your phones or other mobile devices, or you could also print this out. The next step is for our blank grid. I prefer to do this after I've worked with the photo so that I know where the cell numbers will be. To print the blank grid, I simply remove the image behind it. This is now my blank grid. I'll print this off and I know that the numbers on the cells correspond to the ones that I will be seeing over the picture. It's really that simple, and you can probably see why I prefer to do it like this. I sometimes struggle with making my lines straight even with a T-square, so this process just makes it foolproof for me. So that wraps up my grid tutorial. Those are the methods I know and use. And in the next video, I will show a time-lapse where I'm using one of my grids to create a drawing. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.